Proof of funds. The store manager, Veronica Sterling, let out a sharp, disbelieving laugh. Her gaze swept dismissively over Joanna Joss, lingering on her simple navy blazer. For that necklace from the Aurora collection. Before I even think about unlocking that case, I'm going to need to see something concrete. Something that shows you can actually afford to breathe the same air as these diamonds. A certified bank statement, perhaps. Or are you just here to browse and waste my valuable time? Joanna Joss's voice was quiet, dangerously calm, a stark contrast to the manager's escalating disdain. And is that your standard procedure for all potential customers, Veronica? Or is this special consideration reserved just for, shall we say, my type? Veronica's lips curled into a sneer, her eyes glinting with malice. Let's just say I have an eye for who belongs in a place like Luminous Designs, and who is clearly out of their depth. Or perhaps here with less than honorable intentions. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial hiss. So what will it be? Show me you're not a risk, or I'll be forced to show you the door. Has a snap judgment ever led to an outcome no one saw coming? And what happens when the person you completely misjudge holds a power you can't even imagine? Subscribe and ring that notification bell so you don't miss how this unfolds, and then head to the comments. We're dying to know if you were in Joanna's shoes, what would your next move be? It was a morning like any other in Beverly Hills, which is to say it was already extraordinary. Sunlight the color of pale champagne spilled over the flawless facades of Rodeo Drive, making the palm trees look like emerald sculptures. But for Joanna Joss, CEO and founder of the Luminous Designs jewelry empire, the approach to her flagship store was always a quiet pilgrimage, not a parade. She navigated her 15-year-old Honda Civic, a faithful, unassuming companion, through a river of gleaming Bentleys and silent Teslas. Joanna allowed herself a small internal smile. Well, old friend, she thought, patting the dashboard, we certainly do stand out in this crowd, don't we? But then again, so do some of the best ideas. The car, like the simple tarnished silver bracelet on her wrist, her grandmother's legacy, was a reminder. A touchstone to a past that had forged her a past, where respect was a currency. She often found herself short-changed on a past that fueled her unwavering commitment to ensuring no one else felt that sting within the walls she had built. She parked a little way down the street, the practiced anonymity of her arrival, a stark contrast to the power she wielded. Her navy blazer was perfectly pressed, her demeanor, one of quiet elegance, nothing that screamed, billionaire CEO. It was how she preferred it. These unannounced visits weren't about catching people out. They were about feeling the true pulse of her creation, ensuring the Luminous Designs experience was as genuine and welcoming as the values she'd poured into its foundation. As she pushed open the heavy, ornate glass door of Luminous Designs Beverly Hills, a wave of cool, jasmine-scented air greeted her. The store was an oasis of hushed luxury. Her eyes, sharp and discerning, took in the familiar layout she had personally overseen years ago. And then they caught a flicker of movement from a large, discreetly placed television screen near the entrance tuned to a morning news program. The volume was low, almost a whisper, beneath the classical music, but a ticker running across the bottom of the screen snagged her attention. Jonathan Joss, renowned Native American actor, passes away at 63. Joanna paused just for a beat. A fleeting shadow, an unreadable emotion crossed her face. Jonathan Joss, a man who had carved a path, who had brought dignity and presence to his role as a fellow traveler in a world that wasn't always quick to make space. The thought settled in her for a moment, a quiet echo of respect, a reminder of legacies before she refocused on the task at hand. Her task, her store. Her gaze swept the room again, a practiced, almost imperceptible scan. Beyond the slightly crooked picture frame on a side wall that her assistant manager, Redcorn Torres, would normally have spotted, she noted other things. A display case near the back that seemed a little less brilliantly lit than the others. A faint, almost invisible smudge on one of the glass countertops. Tiny details, perhaps, but in a world built on perfection and aspiration, details mattered. They spoke of care or the lack thereof. They were the subtle whispers that could precede a louder problem. A figure emerged from the private viewing rooms at the rear of the store, gliding across the marble floor with an air of polished authority. This was Veronica Sterling, the manager of this flagship location. Veronica was the epitome of Beverly Hills chic, her blonde hair sculpted into an impeccable chignon, her dress a masterclass in understated expense, her smile perfectly calibrated. But Joanna, a connoisseur of human nature as much as of precious gems, saw the quick, appraising sweep of Veronica's eyes as they landed on her. It was a look that didn't just see a potential customer, but categorized Wade, and Joanna suspected found wanting. Perhaps this navy blazer isn't quite Beverly Hills enough for a Tuesday morning. Joanna mused internally, a dry wisp of amusement touching her thoughts. Or maybe it's the absence of a yappy dog in a diamond-studded carrier. "Good morning," Veronica said, her voice smooth, modulated every syllable perfectly placed. "Welcome to Luminous Designs. May I assist you with something special?" Today, the smile Joanna noted was brilliant. It just didn't quite reach those cool, assessing eyes. "Good morning," Joanna replied, her own voice, warm, friendly, giving nothing away. "I'm just browse for now, thank you. Everything is so beautifully displayed." She let her gaze wander deliberately, lingering on a case of elegant but not ostentatiously priced sapphire pendants. Veronica's smile tightened just a fraction. "Of course. Please take your time. If anything catches your eye, do let me know. I am Veronica, the store manager." The emphasis on store manager was subtle yet unmistakable, a gentle assertion of her domain. "Thank you, Veronica," Joanna said, nodding pleasantly. She watched as Veronica's attention began to drift her posture, still polite, but with an air of someone waiting to be summoned for a more significant interaction. Joanna understood. She'd seen this subtle dance countless times in countless places long before Luminous Designs was even a dream, the silent sorting the unspoken judgments based on assumptions as flimsy as air. It was in part why she was here, with a quiet resolve solidifying within her, a resolve sharpened by memory and purpose. Joanna Joss turned her attention away from the sapphires. Her gaze traveled across the expansive showroom, past the glittering diamonds and lustrous pearls, until it settled on the heart of the store, the collection that was her personal pride, her creative pinnacle. "Actually, Veronica," she called out, her voice still mild, but with a new undercurrent of intent, "I believe I would like to see the Aurora collection. The Aurora, museum quality, eye-wateringly expensive. And for Joanna, the perfect, uncompromising test." Veronica Sterling's perfectly sculpted smile faltered, just for a microsecond, an almost imperceptible twitch at the corner of her lip. The Aurora collection. Her eyes did another quick, involuntary sweep over Joanna Joss. The simple blazer, the absence of ostentatious branding, the quiet, almost unassuming demeanor. It didn't add up. The Aurora pieces weren't for casual browsers. They were for serious collectors, for those whose bank accounts whispered a different language. The Aurora. Veronica repeated, her voice regaining its smooth cadence, though a new note, a faint chill, had crept in. "Of course. Those are our most exclusive pieces. Truly exceptional. Might I inquire if there's a particular occasion you have in mind for such a significant acquisition?" The words were polite textbook salesmanship, yet underscored by a subtle emphasis that felt more like a gentle interrogation, a soft probing for credentials. Joanna met Veronica's gaze, her own expression open, unreadable. "No particular occasion, Veronica." "Sometimes beauty is its own reason, wouldn't you agree?" She offered a small, enigmatic smile. She knew this dance, the polite professional veneer barely concealing the gatekeeping, the subtle sizing up. It was a performance, and Joanna, in her own way, was now directing a scene within it. A beat of silence passed. Veronica's smile remained fixed, but her eyes were like chips of ice. Indeed, she conceded, though, the word lacked warmth. "If you'll follow me, then." She turned her movements fluid and practiced leading Joanna towards the heavily secured, velvet-lined alcove, where the Aurora collection glittered under strategically angled lights. Each piece was a masterpiece, a testament to the craftsmanship Joanna had personally nurtured within luminous designs. Veronica unlocked the reinforced glass case with a key from a chain around her wrist, the click of the lock echoing in the hushed atmosphere. She slid the panel open, but hovered protectively, her posture that of a guardian dragon rather than an accommodating sales manager. She presented a stunning necklace, a cascade of white and cognac diamonds, its centerpiece a flawless pear-shaped stone that seemed to drink in the light. "This is the Starlight Serenade," Veronica announced, her voice taking on a rehearsed reverence. "The primary diamond alone is over 50 carats. Joanna leaned closer, her gaze focused, intense. She didn't reach out to touch it, not yet. "The cut on the pear is exquisite," she murmured more to herself than to Veronica. "A modified brilliant, I believe, to enhance the fire in a stone of this depth. Colombian origin, isn't it, for the emeralds accenting the clasp?" Veronica blinked, visibly taken aback. Customers, even wealthy ones, rarely possessed such specific, technical knowledge. "Ah, yes, that is correct." She stammered a flicker of something, surprise, annoyance, crossing her features. She quickly recovered her poise. "You certainly know your gemstones." The compliment was delivered with a tone that suggested Joanna had perhaps read a pamphlet. Joanna's eyes twinkled, a fleeting spark of amusement. "Oh, my dear Veronica," she thought, a silent, internal chuckle. "If you only knew." She just explained diamond sourcing to the woman who negotiated the exclusivity contracts with those very Colombian mines, the woman who personally signed off on the final design of this Starlight Serenade, and named it after her grandmother's favorite opera. Outwardly, Joanna simply nodded. "I have an appreciation for the finer details." She then pointed a slender finger towards one of the prongs holding the main stone. "The clarity is impeccable, of course, but I do notice the setting here. The prongs securing the main diamond appear slightly uneven, almost imperceptibly so, but for a piece of this caliber, it's something one might wish to see perfected." Veronica's face stiffened. The subtle critique, especially from this customer, pricked her professional pride. "Our pieces are crafted by master jewelers, madam," she said, her voice losing some of its earlier smoothness, a defensive edge creeping in. "Each setting is meticulously inspected. I have no doubt they are masters," Joanna replied calmly, her tone diplomatic yet firm. "And I'm merely observing with a very particular eye for quality. It's a habit you see from years in a rather detail-oriented business." Before Veronica could formulate a response, the melodic chime of the front door announced new arrivals. Both women glanced up. Framed in the entrance were Mr. and Mrs. Harrington, a distinguished couple in their late 60s, emanating an aura of old money and effortless sophistication. They were, Joanna knew from past reports, though she had never met them, very good, very regular clients. Veronica's entire demeanor transformed in an instant. The cool defensiveness vanished, replaced by a dazzling, incandescent smile that this time reached her eyes with genuine warmth. It was like watching a statue abruptly come to life, animated by an entirely different spirit. "Mr. and Mrs. Harrington," she exclaimed, her voice now rich with an effusive welcome that bordered on reverence. She took a step away from Joanna, almost as if forgetting her presence entirely. "Excuse me," she murmured perfunctorily in Joanna's direction, without making eye contact, already moving towards the newcomers. Joanna watched a silent observer to the sudden dramatic shift. Veronica practically glided towards the Harringtons, her hands clasped in delight. "How absolutely wonderful to see you both. What a delightful surprise. Are you in for anything special today? Perhaps another anniversary treasure?" Mrs. Harrington Joanna was left standing alone beside the still-open Aurora display case, the magnificent Starlight Serenade, glittering indifferently before her. The irony was not lost on her. The owner of all this splendor, momentarily invisible. She could hear every word of Veronica's animated conversation with the Harringtons, inquiries about their recent trip to Monaco, compliments on Mrs. Harrington's new Chanel jacket, offers of champagne, and a private viewing suite. It was then that Emily Hayes, a young sales associate with bright, intelligent eyes, noticed Joanna. Emily had been discreetly rearranging a display of pearl earrings nearby, but she'd observed the subtle shift in Veronica's attention, the way this new, quietly dressed customer had been so abruptly sidelined. It didn't sit right with Emily. Her training, and indeed her own natural inclination, was to treat every person who walked through their doors with equal courtesy. With a hesitant but kind smile, Emily began to move towards Joanna. "Ma'am," she started softly, "is there anything at all I can help you with while you wait? Perhaps I could get you a water, or show you some other pieces from the Aurora collection." Before Joanna could respond, Veronica's voice, sharp as a shard of glass, cut across the store. "Molly, the shipment of new clasps for the Charisma line just arrived. They need to be inventoried and cross-referenced with the order manifest. Immediately, please. In the back office." There was no mistaking the steel in Veronica's tone, nor the pointed glance she shot towards the young associate. It was a clear, unequivocal dismissal. Emily froze her face, flushing slightly. She looked from Veronica's imperious expression back to Joanna, an apology in her eyes. Joanna offered Emily a small, almost imperceptible nod and a gentle smile. "It's quite all right, dear," she said softly, her voice carrying only to Emily. "Thank you. I can wait." Emily, looking relieved, yet also a little defeated, murmured a "certainly, ma'am," and scurried towards the back of the store. And so Joanna Joss waited. She stood by the Aurora collection, a silent queen in her own forgotten castle, observing the meticulous, almost subservient attention Veronica lavished upon the Harringtons, observing the casual way Mr. Harrington handled $1 million watch, no questions asked about his occasion or proof of funds, observing the easy laughter, the comfortable chairs materializing the flutes of champagne, appearing as if by magic. Every passing second, every fawning gesture Veronica made towards the Harringtons was another grain of sand falling through the hourglass of Joanna's patience. Her initial intention to merely test the waters to observe was now solidifying. The faint, amused detachment she'd felt earlier was coalescing into something far more formidable, a quiet gathering storm of resolve. The unseen shadows of past slights were no longer just memories. They were fuel, and the fire was beginning to burn. The tinkling laughter from the Harringtons, a polite counterpoint to Veronica Sterling's solicitous murmurs, seemed to amplify the silence surrounding Joanna Joss. 15 minutes. 15 minutes she had stood a silent sentinel by the Aurora collection, watching a performance of preferential treatment, so blatant it was almost theatrical. The champagne flutes, the plush velvet chairs offered to the favoured couple the deferential bows. It was a masterclass in fawning. And for Joanna, nothing. Not a glance, not a word, not even the pretence of continued service. Her grandmother's bracelet felt cool against her wrist, a familiar anchor. The amusement she'd felt earlier had long since evaporated, replaced by a chilling clarity. This wasn't just poor service. This was a symptom of something rotten, a dismissiveness that ran contrary to every principle upon which luminous designs had been built. The subtle test was over. Now it was time for a more direct engagement. Taking a calm, deliberate breath, Joanna moved. She didn't stride or hurry. She simply walked with an unruffled grace that drew the eye towards the little tableau of luxury Veronica had orchestrated around the Harringtons. "Excuse me, Veronica," Joanna said, her voice perfectly pitched, polite yet impossible to ignore. It cut cleanly through the polite chatter. Veronica Sterling turned her smile for the Harringtons, momentarily freezing, before reforming into a mask of strained civility as she faced Joanna. There was a flicker of undisguised annoyance in her eyes, the look one might give a persistent insect. Mr. and Mrs. Harrington, their conversation interrupted, looked on with mild curiosity. Yes, Veronica managed her tone, suggesting Joanna was an unwelcome interruption to far more important matters. "I do appreciate your attending to your regular clients." Joanna said, a hint of steel now lacing the velvet of her voice. "However, as I mentioned earlier, I am still very interested in the Aurora necklace. The Starlight Serenade, I believe it was called." Veronica's perfectly plucked eyebrows rose a fraction. She had clearly hoped Joanna would have taken the rather large hint and either disappeared or resigned herself to browse the significantly less expensive fashion pieces. "Madam," she began, her voice dripping with condescension, "as I believe I tried to imply, the Aurora collection represents a rather substantial financial commitment. Perhaps you might find something more comfortably aligned with your interests in our Signet collection. We have some truly lovely silver pieces there, very popular." She gestured vaguely towards a distant, far less opulent section of the store. The fashion jewelry, pieces that cost less than the sales tax on an Aurora necklace. Joanna felt a muscle tighten in her jaw, but her voice remained steady, dangerously calm. "Thank you for the suggestion, Veronica. However, my interest remains firmly with the Aurora. Specifically, I would like to purchase the Starlight Serenade necklace. The one you quoted at, what was it, $350,000. A strange sound escaped Veronica. It wasn't quite a gasp, not quite a laugh, but a choked, incredulous snort. She looked Joanna up and down again, this time with open disbelief, as if Joanna had just announced an intention to purchase the moon. Then she did laugh, a short, sharp, derisive sound that made Mrs. Harrington's teacup rattle in its saucer. "Purchase it," Veronica echoed, her lips curling into a smirk. "My dear woman, with all due respect, before we even consider retrieving such a piece for a sales transaction, I'm afraid I would need to see, well, proof of funds." She said the last two words slowly, as if explaining a complex financial concept to a particularly dim-witted child. A current bank statement, perhaps, or a letter of credit from a reputable financial institution. Standard procedure for items of this magnitude. Joanna's expression remained impassive, though a storm was now gathering behind her eyes. She glanced briefly towards the Harringtons, who were now openly observing the exchange, their earlier amusement tinged with a certain well-bred discomfort. They had been handling pieces of comparable, if not greater value, for the better part of half an hour. No one had asked them for their bank statements. Proof of funds, Joanna repeated, her voice a soft, silken query that nonetheless carried an edge. She allowed a small, almost thoughtful pause. Proof of funds. For an item in this store. She mused internally, the unspoken "my" hanging in the air of her own mind. Outwardly, she continued, "Is this standard policy for all customers contemplating a significant purchase? Veronica? Or is it a more selective requirement?" Veronica's composure, already strained, began to visibly crack. Her face flushed a dull red beneath her perfect makeup. "For purchases of this value, yes, it is absolutely standard." She lied, her voice a little too loud, a little too defensive. She avoided Joanna's direct gaze, a telltale sign. "We must protect the store from frivolous inquiries, or indeed potential fraud." The implication was clear and insulting. Fraud, Joanna echoed, her voice still quiet, but now laced with an icy precision that made Veronica flinch. "Are you suggesting, Veronica, that I appear fraudulent? Or perhaps that I am simply wasting your valuable time, a frivolous inquiry?" As you put it, the mask of professionalism Veronica had worn was now shredding rapidly. Her carefully constructed facade of a gracious, sophisticated store manager was crumbling to reveal something ugly underneath raw, unadulterated prejudice. "Look," she snapped, all pretense of politeness gone, her accent thickening slightly. "I don't know who you think you are, or what game you're playing, but you clearly don't belong here. You don't look like someone who can afford a single diamond chip from that necklace, let alone the entire thing. You're probably here to cause trouble, or worse, to try and steal something. I've seen your type before." Her voice rose with each accusation, attracting the attention of the few other customers in the store, who now paused, their browse phones subtly angled. "My type?" Joanna asked, her voice dangerously soft. "Yes, your type," Veronica practically shrieked, gesturing wildly. "Now I am asking you for the final time to leave this store. Immediately. Before I am forced to call security and have you removed." Joanna Joss stood her ground. She didn't raise her voice, didn't flinch, didn't betray the cold fury that was now a glacial river flowing beneath her calm exterior. She simply looked Veronica Sterling straight in the eye. "No," she said, her voice quiet but resonant in the suddenly silent store. "I don't think I will be leaving. I won't get out." The simple statement hung in the air, a declaration of war. Veronica's face contorted with rage. You refuse," she sputtered, aghast at such defiance. "This is my store. I am the manager here, and I decide who stays and who goes, and I am telling you to go." She spun around, her eyes frantically searching. "Redcorn, Mr. Torres!" she yelled, her voice shrill, though Redcorn was nowhere in sight near the front. Her gaze then fell upon James Walker, the security guard who had been standing stoically near the entrance, observing the escalating situation with growing unease. "James, escort this woman out of my store. Now, if she resists, you call the police. And if you don't," she added, her voice cracking with fury, "consider yourself fired, both of you. Anyone who doesn't do as I say is fired." The threat hung heavy, a desperate, tyrannical announcement. James Walker shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting between the enraged manager and the impossibly calm woman who was the object of her tirade. Mr. and Mrs. Harrington exchanged an alarmed glance. This was no longer an amusing diversion. This was a full-blown, ugly confrontation. Joanna Joss watched Veronica's meltdown, a profound sadness now mingling with the ice in her veins. The last line had been crossed. Every opportunity for dignity, for professionalism, for simple human decency, had been arrogantly trampled underfoot by Veronica Sterling. Slowly, with an almost regal deliberation that seemed to suck all the remaining sound from the room, Joanna Joss reached into her tailored handbag. Her hand emerged not with a wallet, not with a credit card, but with her sleek, modern smartphone. Her fingers no longer trembling with suppressed emotion, but steady as a surgeon's began to tap the screen. The atmosphere in luminous designs Beverly Hills was no longer just tense. It was electric primed for a lightning strike, and Joanna Joss was about to summon the storm. The sight of Joanna Joss's phone, held with such unyielding steadiness, seemed to ignite a new, more frantic fuse within Veronica Sterling. The manager's already florid complexion deepened to an alarming shade of crimson. "Recording, are you?" she shrieked, her voice cracking. "You think you can intimidate me? You think you can record me in my own store and get away with this? This harassment, I'll have you know, I have rights. I will sue you for slander, for defamation." She was gesticulating wildly now, her carefully crafted chignon starting to unravel loose strands of blonde hair escaping like frantic thoughts. Joanna didn't even glance up from her screen. Her thumb moved with precision, selecting a contact. "I assure you, Veronica," she said, her voice a low, steady counterpoint to the manager's rising hysteria, "I am not recording. There's no need. The store's own security cameras, which I had installed to protect our assets and ensure the safety of our true customers and staff, will have captured every moment of this unfortunate interaction." She paused, then lifted the phone to her ear as it began to ring. "I am simply making a rather urgent business call." The call connected almost instantly. "Laura, good morning," Joanna said, her tone crisp, professional, the voice of a woman accustomed to immediate action and unquestioning obedience. "It's Joanna Joss. I apologize for the short notice, but I require an emergency meeting of the full board of directors. Conference call, if you please, as soon as humanly possible. Today." Veronica, who had momentarily paused, her tirade mouth agape at the mention of a board of directors, now looked utterly bewildered. "Board of directors? What on earth are you talking about? Who is Laura?" Across the store near the back counter, where she had been sent, Emily Hayes's head snapped up. The name Joanna Joss echoed strangely in her ears. It was familiar. Very familiar. Her eyes widened, and she fumbled for her own phone fingers, flying across the screen, pulling up the company's internal staff portal. Redcorn Torres, the assistant manager, who had cautiously emerged from the back office upon hearing the escalating commotion, also froze. He'd seen the name on high-level memos on company-wide congratulatory emails. Joanna Joss. It couldn't be. Could it? Joanna continued her call, oblivious, it seemed, to Veronica's confused interjection, though her gaze remained fixed on the unraveling manager. "Yes, Laura, it pertains to the Beverly Hills flagship location. We have a significant and deeply troubling issue here. A matter of gross misconduct, a severe violation of fundamental company policy." Her voice, though calm, carried the weight of iron. "It involves discriminatory practices, targeted harassment of a customer, and what appears to be a complete and utter abandonment of the core values upon which Luminous Designs was founded." Each word, enunciated with chilling precision, landed like a hammer blow in the suddenly tomb-like silence of the store. The Harringtons had stopped pretending to browse. Their faces were a mixture of shock and fascination. Other customers were now openly recording on their phones, their expressions rapt. James Walker, the security guard, stood rooted to the spot near the entrance, his earlier unease now morphing into a dawning apprehension. Emily Hayes let out a small, strangled gasp. On her phone screen, glowing under the harsh fluorescent lights of the back office area, was the latest company newsletter. and there on the front page, under the headline, CEO Spotlight Joanna Joss on a Decade of Luminous Success, was a photograph. A photograph of the very woman standing calmly in the center of the store, the woman Veronica Sterling had just accused of being a thief. Emily's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with horrified understanding. She quickly showed the screen to Redcorn, whose face drained of all color, leaving it a sickly, pale gray. He looked from the phone to Joanna Joss, then to Veronica, and a wave of nausea hit him. This is preposterous, Veronica finally managed to sputter her voice, a strangled whisper. She was staring at Joanna now, a desperate, wild confusion swirling in her eyes. The earlier rage was still there, but it was being rapidly consumed by a terrifying, encroaching dread. "Who are you? What right do you have to talk about company policy, to call a board meeting?" Joanna held Veronica's gaze. "Laura," she said into the phone, her voice unwavering, "please inform the board that I will be recommending immediate and decisive action. This situation is untenable and requires a resolution before the end of the business day." She listened for a moment. "Excellent. I'll hold while you conference them in." She lowered the phone slightly, though kept it to her ear. The silence in the store was absolute now. Even the classical music seemed to have faded into oblivion. Every eye was fixed on Joanna Joss. "You asked who I am, Veronica." Joanna said, her voice no louder than before, yet it seemed to resonate through every atom of the opulent space. "You declared this to be your store. You spoke of company policy, of core values you believe you uphold." She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. Then, with a quiet dignity that seemed to amplify her power tenfold, she delivered the final, devastating truth. "My name is Joanna Joss. I am the founder of Luminous Designs. I am the Chief Executive Officer. And Veronica," she added, her eyes now holding a universe of disappointment and sorrow, "this is, and always has been, my company. These are my core values you have so spectacularly defiled. And that board you so contemptuously dismissed, they answer to me. If a bomb had detonated in the pristine heart of Beverly Hills, it could not have had a more shattering effect on Veronica Sterling. The name, Joanna Joss, the one she'd heard, the one she'd seen on paychecks and policy documents for the past 8 months, as manager suddenly crashed into her consciousness with the force of a runaway train. The woman she had insulted, demeaned, accused, and tried to eject from the premises was not just any customer. She was the customer, the one person on earth who held Veronica's entire career in the palm of her hand. A sound, a terrible animalistic keen, tore itself from Veronica's throat. Her perfectly made-up face seemed to collapse, to crumple inward. Her knees buckled. She swayed her hands, flailing for support that wasn't there, and then she sank ungracefully to the cold marble floor. The fight, the arrogance, the very essence of her carefully constructed persona, utterly extinguished. Sobs, harsh and ragged, began to rack her body. Joanna watched her, and for the first time, the icy control in her own eyes wavered, revealing not triumph, but a profound, almost unbearable sadness. This was her flagship store, the crown jewel of her empire, a place she had envisioned as a beacon of beauty, a sanctuary of respect. And here in its very heart, that vision had been so cruelly, so casually betrayed. The victory, if it could even be called, that felt hollow, tainted by the ugliness of what she had been forced to witness and confront. The cost of such a betrayal, she knew, would be measured not just in a ruined career, but in the erosion of trust, the tarnishing of a dream. The lingering silence in the Luminous Designs showroom was heavy, thick with unspoken emotions. The shock of the customers, the dawning awe on the faces of the junior staff, the palpable discomfort of the Harringtons, who now seemed to wish the marble floor would swallow them whole. And on that floor, Veronica Sterling, a heap of shattered pride and designer fabric, her sobs the only sound breaking the stillness. Joanna Joss concluded her call with Laura, a few final decisive words, confirming the board's unanimous though somber agreement. "Thank you, Laura. I'll be in touch with the follow-up strategy by end of day." She disconnected the small click of the phone, echoing with an air of finality. Her gaze, compassionate yet unwavering, fell upon the collapsed figure of Veronica. She waited a moment for a particularly ragged sob to subside before she spoke, her voice, devoid of triumph, filled instead with a grave sort of weariness. "Veronica," she began, the name itself seeming to carry the weight of the entire morning. "Please get up. There's no need for this." Slowly, shakily, Veronica pushed herself up, assisted by a now contrite James Walker, who offered a hesitant hand. Her face was a ruin of tear-streaked makeup, her eyes swollen and red. The sophisticated manager was gone, replaced by a broken, frightened woman. "Miss Joss, Joanna, I didn't know," she stammered words, tumbling out in a torrent of desperation. "I swear if I had known who you were, I would never. I was just trying to protect the store, the brand's image. We get so many questionable people trying to—" Joanna held up a hand, a gentle but firm gesture that silenced the flood of excuses. "Veronica," she said, her voice quiet but resonant, "it should not matter who I am, or who any customer is when they walk through those doors. Whether they arrive in a Honda or a Rolls-Royce, whether they are dressed in couture or in denim, whether they are a CEO or a student, saving up for their first small piece of luminous jewelry. They are all to be treated with respect, with dignity. That is the bedrock upon which this company was built. That is the promise we make." She paused, letting her words permeate the charged atmosphere. "You speak of protecting the store's reputation. Let me ask you, Veronica, whose reputation were you truly trying to protect? The store's by alienating a customer based on superficial judgment, or your own prejudices, your own misguided notions of exclusivity? But my children, my mortgage," Veronica whispered, fresh tears welling. "Please, Miss Joss, I'll do anything. Sensitivity, training, a demotion. I'll change, I promise I'll change." Joanna's expression softened with a flicker of something akin to pity, but her resolve remained absolute. "I do not doubt your distress, Veronica, and I am truly sorry that your actions have led to this. But this wasn't a simple mistake, an isolated lapse in judgment. What I witnessed today, what these cameras have recorded, was a pattern of behavior that revealed a fundamental misunderstanding, or worse, a deliberate disregard of everything Luminous Design stands for." She took a deep breath. "Therefore, effective immediately, your employment with Luminous Designs is terminated. Please clear out your personal belongings from your office. Human Resources will contact you regarding the final arrangements." The finality in Joanna's voice left no room for argument. Veronica seemed to shrink further into herself, another choked sob escaping her. Joanna then turned her attention away from the dismissed manager, her gaze seeking out the other staff members who had been thrust into this drama. Her eyes found Redcorn Torres, who stood pale but composed, his earlier shock now replaced by a dawning understanding of the magnitude of what had just transpired. "Mr. Torres," Joanna said, her voice regaining a measure of warmth. "Redcorn, if I may. Throughout this unfortunate episode, you attempted to de-escalate. You questioned an order you clearly felt was unjust, even at personal risk. That shows integrity. That shows leadership potential." Redcorn swallowed, visibly moved. Thank you, Miss Joss. I just tried to do what I thought was right. And you did, Red Corn, Joanna affirmed, which is why, as of this moment, I am appointing you as the new store manager for the Luminous Designs Beverly Hills flagship. A collective gasp went through the onlookers. Redcorn's eyes widened to an almost comical degree. Mama Manager Joanna smiled a genuine, reassuring smile. Yes, Manager. I have a feeling you understand what this brand truly represents. We will of course provide you with all the support and training you need. Her gaze then shifted to Emily Hayes, who stood near the back, looking overwhelmed, but with a spark of hope in her eyes. Emily Joanna said, her voice softening further. Your instinct to offer assistance to a customer you perceived was being ignored, even when it meant potentially going against your direct superior, was admirable. You showed kindness and courage. That is the spirit of Luminous Designs. Emily, I would like to offer you the position of assistant store manager, working alongside Redcorn. Tears welled in Emily's eyes, but this time they were tears of stunned gratitude. Oh, Miss Joss, I don't know what to say. Thank you. And James Joanna continued, turning to the security guard James Walker, who had maintained his professionalism despite Veronica's outburst. You also hesitated to follow an order you knew was wrong? You used your judgment. Luminous Designs values that. You will receive a formal commendation for your conduct and a significant raise effective immediately. James Walker. A man of few words, simply nodded his stoic expression, unable to completely hide his relief and appreciation. Thank you, Madam CEO. As Joanna gave some brief initial instructions to a still reeling Redcorn and Emily about securing Veronica's office and liaising with HR, a small, almost imperceptible wave of relief seemed to wash through the store. The Harringtons, looking profoundly uncomfortable, quietly gathered their belongings and slipped out, murmuring apologies for the intrusion. Other customers began to disperse, some still whispering, others shaking their heads in disbelief. Redcorn, after Joanna had moved towards the back offices, turned to Emily, his eyes wide. Emily, he breathed, running a hand through his already disheveled hair. Did that actually just happen? Am I dreaming? This morning I was worried about the quarterly inventory reconciliation. Emily, equally dazed but with a tremulous smile, Bediat replied, Well, Redcorn, it seems now we get to worry about all the inventory and everything else in this entire store. Congratulations. I think a slightly hysterical giggle escaped her, quickly suppressed. The absurdity and the sudden weight of their new responsibilities were just beginning to sink in. Meanwhile, Joanna Joss had found her way into what had moments ago been Veronica Sterling's office. It was impeccably neat, tastefully decorated, yet it felt cold, impersonal. She didn't sit. Instead, she walked to the window, looking out not at the glittering street, but inwards into the recesses of her own thoughts. The adrenaline of the confrontation was beginning to subside, leaving in its wake a profound weariness and a deep, aching disappointment that settled like a stone in her chest. This wasn't just about one prejudiced manager. This was about her company, her vision. How could this have happened here in her flagship store, a place meant to be the pinnacle of everything she stood for? Had she been too distant, too focused on expansion and design, neglecting the core culture? Were there other Veronicas lurking within her organization, their prejudices hidden beneath layers of polished professionalism? The thought was a chilling one. The responsibility felt immense, a solitary weight that was the price of leadership. This incident, as ugly as it was, had to be more than just a dramatic firing and a couple of well-deserved promotions. It had to be a catalyst, a turning point, a moment not for blame, but for a renewed and fiercely intentional commitment to embedding the values of respect and inclusivity so deeply into the DNA of Luminous Designs that an episode like today's could never ever happen again. The path ahead would require more than just memos and policy updates. It would require a hands-on, heartfelt effort to reconnect with her teams, to listen, to reinforce, and to lead by unwavering example. The fire she had felt earlier, the one fueled by past hurts, was now transforming. It was no longer just the fire of righteous anger, but the steady, enduring flame of a leader's resolve. The work, she knew, was far from over. It was, in many ways, just beginning. The immediate aftermath in the Beverly Hills showroom was a flurry of hushed, purposeful activity. Joanna Joss, her composure a comforting anchor, amidst the residual shockwaves, spent a few minutes with a still-stunned Redcorn Torres and a visibly emotional Emily Hayes. She spoke to them not as a distant CEO, but as a mentor, offering concise, practical guidance on securing Veronica's office, reassuring the remaining staff, and ensuring that every customer who had witnessed the debacle was approached with sincere apologies and an offer of impeccable service. Redcorn, she said, her voice calm but firm, your first priority is your team. Let them know that Luminous Designs stands for respect always. And Emily, your empathy is a rare gift. Nurture it. It will serve you and this company well. She gave them both a look that conveyed both trust and expectation before retreating to the privacy of Veronica's now vacant office to make a series of critical calls. Within the hour, Laura, her ever-efficient executive assistant, had arranged an emergency company-wide video conference. Every Luminous Design store manager, regional director, and senior executive across 12 states was summoned. As their faces appeared on the large screen in her temporary office, a mixture of curiosity and apprehension, palpable even through the digital divide, Joanna took a deep breath. This was not just about damage control. This was about reaffirming the soul of her company. "Good morning, everyone," she began, her voice, even her gaze sweeping across the gallery of faces. "I've called this meeting to address a serious incident that occurred this morning at our Beverly Hills flagship location." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. It involved a profound failure in adhering to our most fundamental customer service principles, and indeed, our core human values. She then recounted the events, not with anger or a desire to vilify Veronica Sterling, but with a factual, almost surgical precision. She focused on the behaviors, the choices made, and the direct contravention of everything Luminous Designs professed to be. For the humorous element, she used her dry wit. The situation escalated from what appeared to be a case of, let's call it, selective customer engagement, to a complete breakdown in professional conduct involving accusations based on, shall we say, somewhat inaccurate initial customer identification. A few managers on screen shifted uncomfortably, a nervous cough or two breaking the silence. The understated nature of her description only highlighted the gravity of the actual events. "This cannot and will not be tolerated," Joanna continued, her voice hardening with resolve. Luminous Designs was not built to be a fortress of exclusivity, designed to make people feel small or unworthy. It was built to celebrate beauty, to mark moments of joy, and to make every single individual who walks through our doors feel valued, respected, and seen. That is not a suggestion. It is a non-negotiable standard. Her eyes scanned the faces again, ensuring her message was connecting. Therefore, effective immediately, we will be implementing several new initiatives. Firstly, a complete review of all customer service protocols, with a renewed emphasis on inclusivity and de-escalation techniques. Secondly, mandatory enhanced training programs for all staff, focusing on unconscious bias, empathetic engagement, and a deep understanding of the Luminous Design's pledge of respect, which I expect will be prominently displayed in every store. Thirdly, I am considering the establishment of a Values Ambassador program, empowering dedicated employees within each location to champion these principles from the ground up. She outlined further steps, her voice resonating with the quiet authority of a leader who was not just dictating policy, but reigniting a mission. There were questions, of course, expressions of shock and support. Joanna answered them all with clarity and an unwavering commitment. By the time the meeting concluded, a new sense of purpose, mingled with a healthy dose of apprehension, had rippled through the leadership ranks. Meanwhile, the digital world had begun to churn. Videos shaky and fragmented, filmed by customers on their smartphones during the confrontation, started appearing on social media platforms. The algorithm, indiscriminate and swift, began to push them into wider circulation. Beverly Hills Karen Jewelry Store Meltdown Undercover CEO. The hashtags were already forming. But Joanna was prepared. Within hours, Luminous Designs issued an official statement personally approved by her. It was a masterclass in crisis communication, not defensive, not evasive. It acknowledged that an unacceptable incident of customer mistreatment had occurred at one of their locations. It stated that immediate and decisive action had been taken by senior leadership who were on site, including the termination of the employee responsible. It powerfully reiterated the company's unwavering commitment to respect dignity and equality for all customers and staff. It concluded by thanking the customers who had brought the matter to wider attention, indirectly validating their actions and promising that Luminous Designs would learn from this and emerge stronger and more dedicated to its founding principles than ever. The statement didn't just diffuse a potential PR nightmare, it began to turn it into a testament to the company's integrity. Later that afternoon, Veronica Sterling made her final unceremonious exit from the Luminous Designs Beverly Hills store. She carried a small, plain cardboard box containing her personal effects. Redcorn Torres, now officially the acting manager, handled the process with a quiet professionalism that belied his own inner turmoil. He offered no judgment, only a polite goodbye, Veronica. I wish you well. Veronica paused at the door, her face pale and drawn, the earlier histrionics replaced by a hollow sort of resignation. She looked back at the opulent showroom, a place that had been her domain, her kingdom just hours before. I truly am sorry, Redcorn, she whispered, her voice barely audible. And for the first time, it sounded as though she might actually mean it, a flicker of genuine remorse in her red-rimmed eyes. I messed up. Terribly. Then she turned and walked out into the unforgiving Beverly Hills sunlight, a solitary figure carrying the weight of her own shattered career. The echo of Joanna Joss's actions began to resonate almost immediately. Positive comments started appearing under the company's official statement. Customers who had witnessed the event posted follow-ups praising the CEO's decisive handling of the situation. Internally, news of the company-wide initiatives and the promotions of Redcorn and Emily sent a powerful message through the ranks. Integrity was valued, misconduct had consequences, and the CEO herself was deeply personally invested in the company's soul. For many employees, it was a reaffirmation of why they had chosen to work for Luminous Designs in the first place. The foundation, though shaken, was already being rebuilt stronger and more resilient than before. A month later, the Luminous Designs flagship store in Beverly Hills breathed a different air. The jasmine scent was still there, the classical music still whispered, the diamonds still blazed with an internal fire, but something fundamental had shifted. Under the stewardship of Redcorn Torres, now finding his footing as store manager, and Emily Hayes, his bright and capable assistant manager, a new warmth permeated the opulent space. The staff, many of whom had witnessed Veronica Sterling's downfall and the quiet, decisive justice that followed, moved with a renewed sense of purpose. Their smiles genuine, their interactions with every customer imbued with an attentiveness that felt authentic, not rehearsed. Joanna Joss chose a quiet Tuesday afternoon for her follow-up visit, this time arriving not as an anonymous observer, but as herself, the CEO. She didn't make an announcement. She simply walked in. Redcorn, alerted by a hushed whisper from a junior associate, hurried to greet her, a slightly flustered but proud smile on his face. "Ms. Joss, welcome. We weren't expecting you, but it's wonderful to see you." He'd lost some of the dazed look he'd worn a month prior, replaced now by the earnest, slightly harried expression of a man determined to live up to a colossal responsibility. Redcorn Joanna greeted him warmly, shaking his hand. "No need for formality. I was just curious to see how things were progressing. And I must say," she added, her gaze sweeping the subtly energized showroom, "I am very pleased." She saw Emily expertly handling a query from an elderly couple, her patience and charm evident. She saw James Walker near the entrance, his posture still vigilant, but his eyes softer, a hint of a smile playing on his lips as he greeted a young woman who looked more like a student than a high roller, yet was being treated with the same courtesy as royalty. A customer, a woman who Joanna vaguely recognized from a distance on that fateful day, approached Redcorn while Joanna was there. "Mr. Torres," the woman said, her voice carrying a note of genuine appreciation. "I just wanted to say the atmosphere in here. It's just lovely now. I used to feel a little intimidated coming in, if I'm honest. But today everyone has been so wonderfully kind." She then glanced at Joanna, a flicker of recognition, and perhaps a touch of awe in her eyes. "And Ms. Joss," she added a little shyly, "what you did, well, it hasn't been forgotten. It meant a great deal to many of us." Joanna felt a warmth spread through her. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "That is precisely the luminous designs I've always envisioned." As the customer moved on, happily attended to by another associate, Joanna caught Redcorn's eye. He was beaming a look of almost boyish pride. He's still a little overwhelmed, perhaps, Joanna thought, with an affectionate internal smile. But he's doing wonderfully. He has the heart for this. Yet as she continued her quiet tour, she noticed a young woman near the entrance, seemingly engrossed in a necklace display, but her smartphone was angled just a little too obviously towards the general store, a subtle reminder. The videos of that day were still out there, part of the digital ether. The story of the CEO who fired her manager had become a minor legend, a viral footnote in the endless scroll of online content. It was a scar of sorts, a reminder that reputations once fractured required constant, diligent mending. Trust once shaken had to be re-earned every single day, with every single interaction. Later, as she prepared to leave, Joanna paused by the Aurora collection, now impeccably displayed every facet, catching the light, every piece radiating silent splendor. Her fingers instinctively went to the tarnished silver bracelet on her own wrist, her grandmother's bracelet. It felt grounding, as it always did. This simple piece of metal had seen her through poverty, through countless rejections, through the grueling years of building an empire from nothing but a dream and an unshakable belief in her own vision. It had outlasted far more valuable, far more dazzling adornments. She thought of Jonathan Joss, then the actor whose passing had, in a strange way, been a quiet prelude to her own store's drama. Legacies. What did one leave behind? Not just the glittering diamonds and the soaring profits she knew, not just the name on the Forbes list or the prestigious awards. Those were fleeting, superficial. What mattered, what truly endured, was the impact one had on other lives, the values one lived by and instilled in others. The path to creating truly inclusive, respectful spaces was not a destination, but a continuous journey, often uphill, requiring constant vigilance, unwavering commitment, and the courage to confront ugliness, even when it resided within one's own house. The incident with Veronica had been painful, a stark reminder of that. But it had also been a crucible, forging a new strength, a deeper resolve within her, and she hoped within luminous designs. A genuine peace settled over Joanna Joss, an earned peace, not the complacent quiet of a battle won, but the steady calm of a leader who understood the ongoing nature of the work. She looked around her store at her team, at the quiet hum of respectful commerce. This was what she had fought for. This was the legacy she was building, one interaction, one moment of dignity at a time. With a final satisfied nod to Redcorn, Joanna turned and walked towards the sunlit Beverly Hills street. She stepped out of the cool, jasmine-scented air of luminous designs and into the warmth of the California day, her stride confident, her spirit resolute. The woman who had once been made to feel she didn't belong had not only reclaimed her space, she was tirelessly working to ensure that everyone everywhere she had a say felt they belonged too. And in that she found her truest, most luminous success. And so Joanna Joss's quiet storm settled, leaving in its wake a landscape changed, not by brute force, but by the unwavering strength of conviction. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? How often do we truly see the person standing before us, beyond the surface, beyond our own ingrained assumptions? How many unspoken battles for dignity are fought each day in moments big and small, in places grand and ordinary? Perhaps the true measure of our worth isn't found in what we own, but in how we choose to treat others, especially when we think no one of consequence is watching. This story, with its intricate dance of power, prejudice, and profound integrity, certainly gave us a lot to reflect on. We believe these moments, these glimpses into the human heart, are what connect us all. And now we'd love to hear from you. What resonated most deeply with you in Joanna's journey? Was there a particular moment that made you pause and think, or perhaps even cheer? More than that, we are always striving to bring you stories that matter, told in a way that touches you. So if you have any thoughts on how we could make our storytelling even more impactful, or perhaps an idea for a theme you'd love to see explored, please share your insights in the comments below. Your feedback is truly invaluable as we grow this community together. If Joanna's story moved you, please give this video a like. It lets us know we're on the right track. And if you believe this message of respect and quiet strength could resonate with someone else, please don't hesitate to share it. For more journeys like this, exploring the depths of human experience and the power of principled action, make sure to subscribe and click that notification bell. We have so many more stories we're excited to share with you. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, may you find strength in your own convictions and warmth in the stories that connect us all.